Hello. Today we begin our journey to understanding how we use data in businesses. Remember in Chapter 1, we looked at data, which are the raw facts that describe something, converting data to meaningful information. Then businesses collect information from multiple sources. Many of these are external, and analyze it to make strategic decisions. And lastly, businesses have you, the knowledge workers, who learn to know the firm, its strategic goals and mission, and you are now a valuable asset because you can make smart decisions and recommendations using all that information you have. So these four concepts help us with the first step to learning how databases are designed. When you make a purchase anywhere for anything, you've just used some type of transaction processing system. Remember Chapter 2 in operational support systems. That's where you read about those. Now, a business has many business activities. These are the processes that are accomplished. For instance, what are all the steps that are needed to make a dentist appointment? And then 2 days later, you cancel that appointment. Whoever answers the phone has to go into some type of information system to confirm that you are a patient, and then to find an available appointment that meets your request. So there's a lot of things that are going on. So in designing a database, we first design the data model, which is the logical data structure that details the relationships among the data elements using pictures or graphics. And this graphic is called an entity relationship diagram. We often just call it an ERD. And it consists of three key elements: the entities, the attributes, and these attributes belong to the entities. I'll talk about those in a second. And then the relationships among these entities. So now this visual of an ERD, entity relationship diagram, depicts some of the data that might be contained in an information system for a doctor's office, even a dentist's office. So as you can see, there's an entity for patient, it's right here, and doctor, which is over here. And the entity in the middle between patient and doctor is an entity, but it has a different name because of the relationship between the two other entities. And it's called a composite entity, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So let's just talk about entities inside a process. We do things. Customers make a purchase of an item, or we might even buy a lot of items. This changes inventory. Inventory levels go down, and we'll contact a distributor asking for them to send us more inventory, unless we're Walmart, because Walmart has a different type of distribution system, in that distributors push their products, and we'll talk about that later. But anyway, we maintain information on customers, employees, product, which might be wine, and all of these are persons, places, things, transactions, events. All of these are entities. Now, the details about a specific entity are called attributes. So what does Sonoma State know about you? They know your temporary address, which might be somewhere in Roanoke Park or in the dorms. They have a permanent address, which is typically your home address, where they're going to send your diploma, especially if you're traveling. Phone numbers, they might have 2 or 3 phone numbers on you. A date of birth, they'll have a social security number. All of these are attributes. Now there are several types of attributes that you'll read about, but one important attribute is called the identifier. The identifier is that unique attribute that enables you or a product or something to be identified. In other words, my social security number uniquely identifies me for a number of agencies. My driver's license number uniquely identifies me within the California system. My student ID my Sonoma State ID uniquely identifies me. And my Sonoma State identification number actually uniquely identified me because I was actually taking a couple courses back in the early 2000s before I went back to get my doctorate. So bottom line is that these unique identifiers typically don't get used again. But all of these are identifiers, and in Microsoft Access, it will be called a primary key, which you'll read about later. Now, there are 3 basic types of relationships between these entities that go into our ERD. And I'll talk about each one of these a little bit, but you're going to read a lot more in that appendix. The top one is the one-to-one, and this is a relationship between 2 entities in which one instance, say me, I can be an instance inside a faculty entity at Sonoma State, that it can be related to only one instance of another entity inside that ERD. In other words, Sandra Newton, a faculty member, has 1 parking permit. Okay, so that's 1-to-1. Now, one-to-many is a relationship between 2 entities where an instance in entity A can be related to 0, 1, or many other instances inside another entity. For instance, Sandra Newton, a faculty member, can teach 0 or 1 or more different courses inside a semester. So during this summer semester, Sandra Newton, a faculty member, is teaching 1 class, Your Business 319. But in the fall, Sandra Newton will be teaching 3 classes. So that's what a one-to-many is. Now, a many-to-many is a relationship between 2 entities in that you can have more than one relationship between the 2. But the thing is that a relational data model, which is used in many data management systems, including Microsoft Access, can't handle those many-to-many relationships directly. So what happens, this is where that composite entity comes into play. All of the many-to-many relationships need to be replaced with a collection of one-to-many relationships. In other words, many customers can buy many different products, but I can't buy the same exact product, but because there's many of them, then it has to have an order composite entity in the middle of it. And this is going to come into play. You'll see this when you're working on your assignment. So, okay, and now I know when I'm talking about this and I'm talking maybe too fast, that's why I'm putting it on the video so you can watch it a little bit. But then also you're going to read it, and then you're going to look at it again. And so there's a lot of pieces to this, all right? So don't worry about it. But the last piece of designing a data model, the ERD, is about the business rules, and that's the cardinality. And these are the rules about that relationship connectivity, meaning that you're identifying the number of occurrences of one entity that can be associated with the other entity. In other words, think about how many classes can one student register for? And actually for you, it's about the number of hours, right? So your system adds up all of the hours for the classes that you've registered for to determine whether or not you can register for another class. And this all happens in that information system. What's the max number of students that can go into any particular class? How many people can purchase a particular seat at tomorrow's San Francisco Giants baseball game? When you were, we buy a ticket for an airline, and it allows us to reserve a seat, but there aren't any seats left to choose. They've oversold the plane. So that's a business rule that from trends and past experience, the airlines know that they can sell up to 10 to 15% more seats than they actually have available because of that attrition. So all of these are business rules that go into designing that data model, which turns actually into the database. Now, after reading Appendix C and the T5 tutorial, you're going to take a small business, Slopeside Ski Rentals, and you're going to design the entity relationship diagram. You'll obtain the information needed to design the ERD from the scenario that's written about the business activities, and it's all in that little write-up. Now, don't worry about getting it perfect. It might take you a couple tries. This assignment isn't closed book, but I want you to better understand what comes into play with these business information systems that we use every day. You think about all of the data out there, even on the internet about you. All of that data is are in different types of databases that businesses are using. Thanks for listening.